Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. When I saw that Craigslist post, it sounded too good to pass up. Free sectional couch, great condition, moving out tomorrow. The pictures looked clean. Beige, no visible stains, nice corner setup. The kind of couch you'd see in a college apartment ad. I had just moved into my first place after splitting rent with two friends who bailed last second, so the living room was basically empty except for a folding chair and an old TV stand. I figured it was my lucky day. The guy's messages seemed normal at first. He said he was moving to another city for work and just wanted the couch gone. He asked if I had a truck. I said no, and he offered to help me load it if I came by. Sounded helpful. I got the address, some quiet suburban neighborhood about 20 minutes out. When I got there, the house looked nice enough, two-story yard trimmed, nothing off. He came out wearing a plain hoodie and jeans, maybe mid-30s. He smiled when he saw me and told me to come inside to check the condition. I walked in and the couch looked exactly like the pictures. Clean, not new, but solid. I was already mentally planning where to put it. Then he said I should test it before we moved it out to make sure it didn't sag. That seemed fair. I sat on one side, bounced a little, said it felt fine. Then he said something that sounded weird but still polite enough not to trip any alarms. He said he needed to film me sitting so he could prove he gave it away for free in case someone accused him of dumping it illegally. That explanation didn't even make sense, but he said it so casually that my brain didn't catch up right away. I laughed a little and said that was unnecessary, but he already had his phone out. I stood up, said I didn't really want to be filmed, and started moving toward the door. He didn't say anything, just kind of stood there with the camera aimed. I opened the door halfway, but then he said in his flat tone that he needed proof or he'd get fined. I froze. There was something about the way he said it that made me realize this wasn't about the couch at all. The living room was too clean, almost staged. No moving boxes, no personal stuff, just that couch and a tripod in the corner. The kind that holds a phone. I noticed then that one of the lamps had its shade tilted, and when I looked closer, there was a small lens inside it. Not a bulb, a camera. My heart started pounding, but I didn't want to panic. I just said I'd come back with a truck later and stepped outside. He didn't stop me, just said sure in this weird calm voice. I got in my car and left. I didn't even look in the mirror until I was halfway down the street. When I finally glanced back, he was standing in the driveway, still watching. That night, I kept thinking about what was off. I couldn't sleep. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the post didn't have any moving boxes in the pictures either. Just that couch in an empty-looking living room. The timestamp on the listing said it had been posted 4 hours before I showed up. That meant he'd staged all that same day. I tried going back to the ad the next morning, but it was gone. Deleted. I even tried searching for free couch again, and another post came up, different address, different photos, but the same exact writing style. I knew it was him. I used another account and messaged it, pretending to be someone else. He replied within minutes, saying I should come today before 6. I didn't go. Instead, I told a friend who works night security, and he said it sounded like one of those scam setups where people get filmed or followed. He told me to report it. I did, but I never heard back. 2 weeks later, my roommate sent me a random TikTok. Some funny Craigslist moments compilation. I was half watching when one clip popped up. It was someone sitting on a base sectional in a living room that looked way too familiar. The caption said, "Free couch test fail." The guy in the video wasn't me, but the room was identical. Same lamp, same weird painting on the wall. It looked like that same setup, just a different person. I checked the comments. A few people said it was clearly staged, but some mentioned how uncomfortable it looked. The account had a bunch of videos like that. Different people sitting on furniture, always from Craigslist. I tried reporting the video, but it disappeared the next day. The account name changed too. I kept thinking about the cameras, how one was in the lamp and the other was probably the phone he had out. He didn't care about the couch. He wanted reactions. People trusting him enough to sit down while he filmed. It's weird how something that small can mess with you. I still check behind lamps now, every Airbnb, every room I live in. I don't pick up free stuff anymore either. Even when it looks brand new, I just walk past it. I started noticing how many free listings there are online with no real reason for giving the stuff away. Half of them say things like moving tomorrow or need gone today. Always urgent. Always simple photos with nothing else in the room. The more I looked, the more it started to seem like a pattern. Like some people are using Craigslist not to sell or give things away, but to watch how far they can push people. How easily we believe normal excuses. A few months later, I was helping a coworker move, and he said he got a free recliner from a listing across town. He was all excited until he mentioned how the guy asked him to sit on it for a proof photo. I asked what he did, and he said he refused. Then the guy got quiet and told him to leave. Same story, different person. It's messed up because there's nothing technically illegal about offering furniture. Even filming someone isn't always against the law if it's on private property and you don't know about it. That's what makes it so disturbing. It's just outside the line of normal. Nobody gets arrested for being creepy. Every time I scroll through those listings now, I catch myself analyzing the photos. I look for reflections in windows, things like that. Once you see how controlled those setups are, you can't unsee it. I still wonder how many people went through what I did but never realized it. Probably a lot. Most just sit, smile, maybe even laugh awkwardly, and then leave thinking they met some weird guy who was overly cautious. They never find the video later. They never notice the same lamp, same couch, same shot angle. I got lucky because I left fast. That's all. Nothing brave about it. Just instinct. I didn't even want to sell the laptop at first. It was this beat-up silver thing I'd had since high school. Stickers half peeled off, a battery that barely lasted an hour. But my friend told me I could get at least $150 for it online, and I needed cash for rent, so I threw it up on Craigslist. I cleaned the keyboard, took a few pictures, and posted it with a description that was honest enough. Nothing fancy, just works fine and small scratches. A guy messaged me a few hours later. His name in the email looked normal, something like Mike84. He said he wanted it for his younger brother who was starting college and asked if I'd meet in a public place. That part made me feel better because I'd heard all the usual horror stories. We picked a grocery store parking lot around noon. Bright daylight, people everywhere. When I pulled up, he was already leaning against a black sedan. Looked about mid-30s, normal clothes, clean cut. He asked to check the laptop, so I opened it and showed it turned on. He typed for a second, said it seemed fine, handed me $150 in cash, and that was it. Smoothest Craigslist deal ever. I didn't think about it again until a week later. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone when I got this email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "Nice photos." I almost deleted it without opening, but curiosity won. Inside was a message that just said, "You forgot to wipe your drive." Attached were screenshots. My stomach dropped when I saw them. It was my old files. Private stuff. Photos, school projects, even screenshots of old messages from years ago. The laptop. I had deleted everything before selling it, or at least I thought I did. I had dragged the folders to the trash, emptied it, even reset my browser history. Apparently that wasn't enough. The guy must have used some recovery program to pull everything back. I replied right away, saying I didn't know what he wanted, that I thought it was clean. He wrote back almost instantly. "I just thought you want to know what people can find when you sell things." No threats, no demands. That made it worse somehow. I told him to delete everything, but he didn't respond. For the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it was him. I even considered messaging him again, just to see if he'd reply, but something told me not to. I didn't know if he was trying to scare me or just messing with me. A few days later, my friend texted me saying someone had sent him a weird message on Instagram. It was a new account with no posts, and they had sent a picture of me from a college folder I hadn't posted anywhere. He asked if I knew the account. I didn't. I checked the profile, and it had a single follower me. Somehow it had already followed my page. That's when it clicked. He was still digging through the files. I started overthinking everything. Did I leave any personal info saved? My bank account and my passwords. I changed all of them anyway. I even went to the police, but they told me there wasn't much they could do. They said once you sell a device, it's basically out of your hands unless the person explicitly threatens you. For the next week, I kept noticing tiny things that freaked me out. A password reset email that I didn't request. A new login alert on an old photo app. My Google account said it was signed in from a different city. I tried tracking it, but it bounced through multiple IP keys. Whoever this guy was, he knew what he was doing. I started wondering if this was even about the files. Maybe he just liked knowing he could reach me any time. That thought got under my skin more than anything. I tried emailing him again, asking directly what he wanted. This time he replied with a screenshot of a map showing my street, blurred but recognizable. The caption said, "Crazy what you can find on an old hard drive." No threats, just reminders. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to my building's office to ask if they'd noticed anyone hanging around. They said no. I ended up calling my friend who works in it, and he said I should file a report with Craigslist and maybe contact the FBI cybercrime unit, but that sounded over the top. Still, I filled out a complaint form on Craigslist. Never heard back. 2 weeks later, I got another email. This one was from a different address, but I knew it was him. It said, "You left your music folder. You got decent taste." And attached was a playlist I made 5 years ago. He renamed it Sold Soul. That was when I finally realized I'd lost control. It wasn't even about the laptop anymore. It was about someone else owning a piece of my life that I couldn't get back. The stuff on that computer wasn't just data. It was years of writing, random photos, notes, and dumb little things that made sense only to me. Now it was sitting in someone else's hands, probably being scrolled through like a museum of mistakes. I thought about changing my email, deleting my accounts, disappearing online, that felt like letting him win. Instead, I tried ignoring it. After a while, the emails stopped. I assumed he got bored. But about 2 months later, one of my old pictures popped up on Reddit in a thread about found files from old laptops. The post had hundreds of upvotes. Someone commented saying, "Looks like another careless seller." It wasn't even an embarrassing photo, just me and a few friends at a diner laughing. But I knew where it came from. It was cropped exactly the same way it had been saved on my desktop. I scrolled through the comments. Some people joked, others asked how the poster found the files. The username was deleted. Classic move. I checked the thread's history. There were dozens of other posts, screenshots of strangers' files, photos, even scanned homework assignments, all tagged as recovered memories. I realized then this wasn't just one person doing it. It was a whole community of people who buy used electronics just to dig through them. They don't care about the devices. They care about what's left inside. I stopped selling anything online after that. Doesn't matter how small. I destroy old hard drives now. Literally smash them. I even replaced my current laptop's drive once just to be safe. People think that sounds paranoid, but once you see how fast something innocent turns personal, it sticks with you. The weirdest part, about 6 months later, I got a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was my old laptop charger. Just a charger neatly coiled in a plain box. That same night, my email lit up again. One message. No text, just a single attachment. A short video clip showing the same silver laptop on a desk. It turned on, showed my old wallpaper for a few seconds, then the screen faded to black. I moved apartments a few weeks later. I didn't tell anyone except close friends. I didn't even post the new place online. Still, every so often, I get a random login attempt on an old account, always from an unknown location. I changed a password, but it never really feels like enough. Now when I sell something, I meet people in busy places and I use cash only. But I haven't sold electronics since. Whenever someone asks why, I just tell them I had a bad deal once. I never tell a whole story. When I first started looking for a cheap room, I wasn't thinking straight. Rent prices were killing me, and I just needed somewhere temporary while I figured things out. I was couch hopping between friends, keeping most of my stuff in my car, and I'd scroll Craigslist every night hoping to find something under $500. Most of the listings were scams, obviously, but one caught my eye because it was detailed and looked like a real person wrote it. Private room, quiet area, month to month, utilities included. The photos looked fine. Plain white walls, small bed, desk by the window. Nothing fancy, but better than sleeping in my car. I texted the number and got a reply within minutes. The guy said his name was Ron, mid-40s, worked nights, so I'd barely see him. He wanted someone low drama and responsible. I told him I was working part-time and just needed a place to crash. He said I could move in that same week if I wanted. Rent was $480, all bills included. That sounded unreal, but I didn't question it. I met him the next day. The place was in this older neighborhood, kind of run down but not dangerous. The house looked lived in, maybe a little neglected. Peeling paint, overgrown grass, that sort of thing. Ron opened the door wearing an old t-shirt and gym shorts. Seemed normal enough, maybe a little quiet. He showed me the room. It matched the photos perfectly. Bed, desk, lamp, small closet. I asked about a lease, and he said it wasn't necessary since it was just month to month. I handed him the cash and moved in 2 days later. At first, everything seemed fine. Ron mostly kept to himself. He'd leave early in the evening and come back around sunrise. I worked mornings, so our schedules didn't overlap much. The only weird thing was how he always locked his own door when he left, like triple locked it, and the kitchen was spotless, like he never used it. My first night, I noticed a faint humming sound in the room. I figured it was an old vent or something. I didn't think much about it. But after a few days, I started noticing small details that didn't add up. Like the smoke detector on the ceiling had a tiny blinking light that never stopped, even when I turned the lights off. I asked Rod about it casually, and he said it was just old wiring. One night, I couldn't sleep, so I scrolled on my phone for a while. I looked up at the smoke detector again, and something hit me. It wasn't blinking like a power light. It was pulsing, rhythmically slow and steady, almost like it was responding to something. I stood on the chair to check, but when I got close, it stopped blinking. Just went dark. That freaked me out, but I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Still, the next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I Googled what hidden cameras looked like, and sure enough, there were smoke detector cameras that looked exactly like mine. The photos online even had the same blinking light. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and used the flashlight to look around the room. I found another small lens tucked inside the lamp on the desk behind the bulb. My hands were shaking. I didn't even bother checking the rest of the room, I already knew. I packed my bag immediately, trying not to make noise. Halfway through, I heard the floor creak outside my door. Someone was in the hallway. I froze, holding my breath. Then I heard keys jingling. Ron's voice came through the door, soft, calm, like he didn't want to scare me. He said, "Everything all right in there?" I didn't answer. I just stood there holding my backpack, trying to decide if I should run for the window or the door. He knocked once, then silence. I waited about a full minute before hearing his footsteps move away. I didn't waste another second. I grabbed my stuff and bolted out the door. When I got to my car, I didn't even start it right away. I just sat there shaking. I wanted to call someone, but who? The cops. What was I even going to say, that I found hidden cameras? They'd probably tell me I had no proof. So I took photos. The smoke detector, the lamp, the wires. I didn't go back inside, though. I just zoomed from the street with my phone camera. I drove to a friend's place across town and crashed on his couch. I told him everything. He looked horrified and said we should report it anyway. So the next morning, he went to the local police station and filed a report. They said they'd send someone to check it out. 2 days later, I got a call from an officer saying the homeowner wasn't there when they came by, but they'd left a note asking him to come in for questioning. He never did. A week went by and I heard nothing else. Then one morning I saw a new listing on Craigslist that looked strangely familiar. Same format, same writing style. Private room, quiet area, month to month, utilities included. Even the rent was the same minus $480, but the pictures were different. Different room, different furniture. Still, something about the way the ad was worded felt identical. I used a fake email to message the post. The reply came from a different name, but the writing was the same tone. Same quick replies saying, "I work nights." I sent the link to the officer, but they said they couldn't prove it was the same person. That's when I realized this guy probably did it often, renting rooms short-term, filming people, then vanishing before anyone could do anything. I started digging around online and found a few threads on Reddit and local boards where people described similar setups, cheap rooms, hidden cameras, landlords disappearing after complaints. Most never got caught. A few months later, I got a random text from an unknown number. It said, "You left something behind." I didn't reply. I blocked it immediately. But a few days after that, I got another message, this time from a different number. "You're safe now. Promise." That messed with me more than anything. The idea that he knew I was still around, still thinking about it. Since then, I can't relax anywhere I live. I check every vent, every outlet. I even cover the little camera on my laptop with tape. People laugh when I tell them, but I don't care. I know what I saw. Sometimes I wonder if anyone else found those same rooms and never noticed the cameras. Maybe they stayed longer. Maybe their videos ended up online somewhere. It's not like the police would ever find them. It's easy to hide behind fake names and cash deals. Every now and then I think about that night, the humming sound, the blinking light, and I realize how close I was to ignoring it. I could have lived there for months and never known. Now, whenever I see a cheap room for rent post online, I scroll right past it. Doesn't matter how legit it looks. Once you've seen how normal evil can look, you can't unsee it.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I'd been saving up for a car for months. Not a nice one, just something that could get me to work and back without dying halfway there. My old one had finally quit on the highway, and I'd been borrowing my cousin's ride for weeks. I didn't have enough money for a dealership, so I started checking Craigslist every night. There were tons of listings, but most were scams or junk. Then one ad stood out: 2008 Honda Civic, great condition, $3,800, low mileage. The pictures looked solid, and the description sounded legit. I texted the number and the guy replied fast. Said his name was Derek. He said he was selling it because he got a company car and didn't need to. I asked about mileage and maintenance, and he sent me receipts and a photo of the title. Everything checked out. We agreed to meet at a gas station during the day so I could check it out. When I pulled up, the car looked even better in person. Clean interior, shiny paint, smooth idle. Derek looked like any other guy, button-up shirt, polite, straightforward. I took it for a test drive, and it ran fine. No noises, no warning lights. He said he'd had it listed for a week and had a few offers, which pushed me to decide faster. I handed over the cash, signed the title, and drove off feeling proud. The first week was great. I felt like I'd finally caught a break. But after a few days, weird stuff started happening. One night I got home late, and as I parked, I noticed another car slowly drive by my street, headlights off. It stopped for a second, then kept going. I figured it was nothing. But the next night, the same car passed again. A few days later, I went to grab something from the back seat and saw a small blinking light under the driver's seat. It was faint, like a tiny red dot. I thought it was a leftover piece of wiring or a charger light, but when I reached under to check, I felt something taped to the metal frame. I pulled it out and saw a black box, about the size of a matchbox. No logo, just a single blinking light. I didn't know what it was at first. I Googled the model number printed on the back, and my stomach dropped. It was a GPS tracker, a live one. The kind you can sync with an app to see real-time location. I sat in the car for a few minutes just staring at it. Then I started thinking about all the times I'd seen that same car drive by my place. What if it was him? Why would he need to track me after selling the car? I went inside and started searching online. Turns out there are whole forums where people talk about hidden trackers found in used cars. Some sellers use them for repossession, others for security, and some for other reasons. That part got to me. I called the number Derek used when we met, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message saying I found something weird in the car and wanted to talk. No reply. The next day, the number was disconnected. That's when I decided to dig deeper. I took the tracker apart and found a SIAM card inside. I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured I could maybe trace the carrier. I called the provider, told them I found the device, and wanted to know who owned the account. They wouldn't tell me much, but they said it was registered under a business account linked to Autovision Rentals. I looked that up, no real website, just a few listings on car forums saying they sold fleet monitoring equipment. That didn't feel like the full story. A friend of mine who works in tech said I should check for more devices just in case. So I spent the next hour tearing through my car, under the seats, behind the glove box, even under the trunk carpet. I found a second one taped near the spare tire. Smaller, no light. I felt sick. I called the police and told them everything. They sent an officer who looked at the devices, but said there wasn't much they could do unless I had proof someone was actively tracking me. He told me to keep the trackers and write down any suspicious cars I saw nearby. That didn't exactly make me feel better. For the next few days, I kept seeing the same black sedan parked down the street, always in a different spot, always empty. I started driving different routes to work. One night, I even parked at a friend's place across town just to see what would happen. The next morning, the sedan was parked 2 blocks away from there too. And that's when I decided to confront whoever it was. I'd waited in my car that night, parked facing the street. Around midnight, the black sedan rolled by again and slowed down near my driveway. I turned on my headlights and started the engine. The sedan sped up and took off. I followed. It wasn't easy keeping up, but I managed to stay close enough to get part of the license plate. I turned around once he hit the main road. I didn't want to get pulled into something worse. I ran the partial plate through a friend who works at a tow yard. He said it came up registered to a rental company, not an individual. That made me realize something, a name from the Siam card, Autovision Rentals. It was probably the same company. But when I checked online again, the listings were gone. The number I had saved from their fake website didn't work either. Weeks went by and I stopped seeing the sedan. I thought maybe it was over. Then one day I got an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a printed photo of my car parked outside my work. Written on the back in pen were the words, "You drive well." I moved apartments a few weeks later. I changed my phone number too. I got the car checked by a mechanic I trusted, and he found another tracker hidden inside the rear bumper. That made 3 total. He told me it looked like something installed professionally, not homemade. It had a magnetic mount and a waterproof case. He asked if I wanted to keep it, but I told him to throw it out. A few days later, I started thinking about how this all started with a random Craigslist ad that seemed too clean, too easy. I went back to check if it was still up, but of course it wasn't. I did notice something though. Another listing had popped up with the exact same photo of the car I'd bought, but under a different seller name and different price. Same car, different story. I reported it to Craigslist again, but nothing happened. The ad stayed up for days before disappearing. I realized then this was probably a routine. They sell the same car over and over, track whoever buys it, maybe steal it back later, maybe worse. I sold the Civic 2 months later. Took a loss, didn't care. I just wanted it gone. The buyer was a young guy, said it was his first car. I told him everything that happened, but I could tell he thought I was overreacting. Before he drove off, I made him promise to take it to a shop and have it checked. I hope he did. Now, whenever I see an ad online that says great deal or must sell quick, I feel this weird chill. I think about how easy it was for someone to follow me for weeks, how simple it is to plant something small and invisible that tells them exactly where I am. People think Craigslist scams for just about fake checks or stolen phones. They never think about the ones that don't end with a transaction, just someone quietly keeping tabs on you long after you drive away. I used to think getting professional pictures taken was something only influencers did. The idea of paying someone to take photos of me sounded ridiculous. But when I started applying for jobs and freelance gigs, everyone kept saying I needed a proper headshot. I didn't want to pay a studio $200, so I did what everyone does. I searched Craigslist. There were tons of listings, most of them sketchy, but one caught my eye. The post said, "Affordable portraits, experienced photographer building portfolio." The guy's name was listed as Tom. He had sample shots that looked legit, simple lighting, clean edits, normal people, not models. The rate was only $40 for an hour session. It seemed fair, and the ad said he'd come to any outdoor location. I figured that was safe enough. I texted him, and he responded right away. He sounded polite, professional even. He said he liked using natural light, and asked if I could meet at a park near downtown. That felt public enough, so I agreed. He said he'd bring his own camera gear, and I didn't need to bring anything except a change of shirt. The day of the shoot, it was cloudy but warm. I got there early, trying not to look awkward standing around by myself. Then Tom showed up carrying one of those big black camera bags. He was older than I expected, maybe late 40s, but friendly. He talked about lighting angles and posing, and for a while, everything felt totally normal. We started with a few shots near a tree line, then moved closer to the water. He told me to look over my shoulder, stand a certain way, all the usual directions. He'd check his camera screen every few shots, mumbling about great framing and good texture. It was awkward but fine. After about 20 minutes, he suggested trying something a little more casual. He pointed to a wooden bench nearby and said sitting photos looked more natural. I sat down, and he kept snapping pictures while moving around me in a circle. Then he crouched lower, like really low, pretending to get a better angle. That's when I noticed his lens wasn't pointed at my face anymore. I asked what he was doing, and he just said he was playing with perspective. I laughed nervously, but decided to ignore it. I figured maybe that's how photographers worked. When the session ended, he said he'd edit the photos and send them by email the next day. I paid him the $40 in cash, we shook hands, and that was that. The next morning, I checked my email. Nothing. By evening, still nothing. I texted him asking when I get the photos. He replied, "Tomorrow for sure, just fixing lighting." 2 days later, no photos. I texted again, and this time he didn't reply. By day 4, I gave up. I figured he'd scammed me for the money, which sucked but wasn't the end of the world. A week later, I forgot about it. Then one night, my friend sent me a link to a random Reddit thread titled Candid Street Photography. I clicked it, not thinking much, and froze. A thumbnail showed someone sitting on a park bench, same clothes, same me. The caption said, "Found beauty in simplicity." I clicked the photo and my stomach twisted. It was one of Tom's shots, except cropped weirdly. The frame was tighter, the angle lower, and I realized instantly why. He had been taking portraits. He'd been taking voyeur photos. There were dozens of other images in the thread too, all street portraits of random people sitting, bending, walking. I scrolled through the comments. People were complimenting his composition. Some even said it looked intimate. I clicked on his profile and my blood ran cold. His username was UrbanFocus84. He had hundreds of posts. Every one of them was a photo of someone he'd shot without them realizing. Different cities, different people, same style. And buried in the mix, I found another shot of me from the same session. This one zoomed in from behind, completely unflattering, clearly not meant to be seen. I immediately messaged him through Reddit, demanding he delete the photos. No reply. I reported the post, but it stayed up for days. Then I checked Craigslist again and found his ad still lived, same wording, same price. I used another email to message him pretending to be a new client, and he replied within minutes, all polite again, like nothing had happened. I sent everything to Reddit's support team and filed a report on Craigslist too. The ad disappeared after a few days, but the photos were still online. Other users had saved and reposted them. Some had even edited and re-uploaded them. It was like trying to put out a fire with a cup of water. I felt sick knowing my face, and those photos were floating around somewhere on the internet, being commented on by strangers. Every time I tried searching my name, I worried something new would pop up. A few weeks later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject, no body, just one attachment, a photo. It was another shot from that day, one he hadn't posted before. This one was zoomed in close, taken while I was walking away at the end of the shoot. I didn't even know he'd taken it. That was the moment it stopped feeling like a mistake. This wasn't about photography or art. He wanted control. He wanted people to trust him so he could take something from them without them noticing. I thought about going to the police, but what was I supposed to say? He took photos of me in a public park. They'd tell me that wasn't illegal. He hadn't touched me or threatened me. He'd just taken advantage of the fact that I didn't know better. So I did the only thing I could. I started warning people. I made a burner Craigslist account and began replying to every new photographer ad I saw that matched his writing style. Most never replied, but a few did, and every time, the tone was the same. Too friendly, too fast, always suggesting outdoor shoots. After a while, I stopped checking. It was exhausting. I deleted the email thread, the Reddit link, everything. But sometimes I still get random follow requests on Instagram from accounts with no posts, no followers. I block them without thinking. Last month, I saw a new post on Craigslist from someone offering free portraits to build portfolio. Different name. Same photo style. I clicked the sample pictures, and one of them looked familiar. The background, the tree line, it was that same park. The bench was still there. I don't think Tom ever stopped. He probably just changed names, changed emails, started over. There's no way to stop someone like that when they hide behind the idea of being creative. Now whenever someone mentions needing headshots, I tell them to go to an actual studio, not some random guy online. I don't tell them why though. It's easier to just let them think I'm being paranoid. Sometimes I drive past that park on my way to work, and I still see people out there getting photos taken, smiling, posing, laughing. Every time, I wonder if one of those photographers is him. I wonder how many people don't realize that the line between portrait and prey is a lot thinner than they think. When I think back to that summer, I don't know what I was thinking. I was broke, jobless, and tired of asking my mom for gas money. I'd just finished my first year of college and didn't want to go back to working fast food, so I started scrolling through Craigslist for anything quick. Dog walking, cleaning, babysitting, whatever. Most ads were sketchy or vague, but one stood out. It said, part-time sitter needed for quiet household. Easy work, flexible hours, cash payment. The post looked short, simple, no typos. It even mentioned background checks, which made it seem professional. The rate was $20 an hour, which was way more than I expected. I emailed them that night. The reply came fast. Someone named Mrs. Randall said she needed help watching her son a few afternoons a week while she worked from home. She said he was quiet, polite, and mostly kept to himself. I figured it was a little weird she didn't mention his age, but I didn't question it. She sent me her address and said to come by that Friday to meet him and see the place. When I pulled up, the house looked normal enough. Big front porch, well-kept lawn, quiet street. A woman opened the door as soon as I knocked. She looked older than I expected, maybe late 50s. Neat hair, pressed shirt, friendly smile. She thanked me for coming and invited me in. The house was spotless, like something out of a magazine. It didn't smell like food or cleaning products, just neutral. She led me down the hallway and said her son, Eric, was in his room. She knocked twice and told him to come say hi. The door opened slowly, and this tall guy stepped out. I froze for a second because he wasn't a kid. He wasn't even close. He had to be around 25. He didn't say anything, just looked down at the floor while Mrs. Randall smiled and said, "This is my boy." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and smiled awkwardly. She explained that Eric had some social struggles and needed someone around when she worked. I figured maybe he had a developmental issue or something. I'd worked with kids before, so I told her I was fine with it. She said the job was simple. Keep him company, make sure he eats, remind him to shower, basic stuff. She offered to pay cash weekly. I said yes. I didn't want to seem rude or judgmental, even though it felt strange. My first shift was the next day. She told me to come at 1 p.m. and stay until 6. When I arrived, she was getting ready to leave. She told me lunch was in the fridge and Eric was in his room. She said he liked routine and might not talk much. When she left, the house went completely silent. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. After a few minutes, I knocked on Eric's door to tell them lunch was ready. No answer. I waited, then knocked again. Still nothing. I went to the kitchen and started making a sandwich, hoping he'd come out eventually. About 10 minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, and he was standing there watching me. He didn't look angry or anything, just blank. I said hi and told him there was food. He nodded, sat at the table, and ate without saying a word. I tried small talk, but he barely responded. After a while, he got up, rinsed his plate, and went back to his room. The next few shifts went about the same. He didn't do much besides sit in his room or stare at the TV. He never left the house, never used his phone, never smiled. The weird part was that Mrs. Randall never actually worked from home while I was there. She always left, every single time. By the end of the second week, I started feeling like something wasn't right. There were no photos of Eric in the house. None. Just old family pictures that stopped around the time he would have been a teenager. And the fridge had almost nothing in it except bottled water, eggs, and white bread. No groceries, no leftovers, nothing personal. One afternoon, I got curious and peeked into the laundry room because I heard a humming sound. The dryer was running, but when I looked inside, it was empty. That same humming sound was coming from somewhere else. I followed it down the hall to the vent above Eric's room. It was faint but steady like machinery. That night, when Mrs. Randall came home, I asked casually what kind of work she did. She paused for a second and said, "Medical administration." I didn't press. The next day, she texted saying she had to go out of town and asked if I could stay overnight just to keep an eye on things. She offered $200. I hesitated but said yes. When I got there that evening, Eric was sitting in the living room watching static on the TV. Actual static, no channel. I asked if he wanted dinner, but he didn't respond. I made pasta anyway and left a plate for him. When I came back later, A plate was empty, but he was gone. I checked the hall. His door was open. I peeked inside. His room was empty except for a bed, a dresser, and a desk with a bunch of notebooks stacked neatly. No decorations, no posters, nothing personal. I shouldn't have, but I opened one of the notebooks. It was full of short sentences written over and over. "Don't leave. Stay still." She said not to. I closed it fast and backed out. I didn't sleep much that night. I stayed in the guest room, door locked, lights on. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, heavy ones. They stopped right outside my door. Then silence. I waited, trying not to breathe. After what felt like forever, the footsteps moved away. The next morning, Mrs. Randall came back like nothing happened. She asked if everything went smoothly, and I just said yes. She handed me the cash and thanked me. I didn't go back. About a week later, curiosity got the better of me. I checked Craigslist again, and her ad was still there. Same description, same pay. I used another email to message her pretending to be someone new. She replied with the same script, same lines, same quiet household. I tried searching her name online, but nothing came up. No Facebook, no business listings. I even checked public records for that address, and the homeowner listed wasn't anyone named Randall. That freaked me out. A few months later, I read an article about a missing persons case in a nearby city. The photo looked like Eric, only younger. The article said he disappeared years ago from a group home. The description matched perfectly, the same build, same eyes. I tried reporting what I knew, but the cops said unless I had solid proof it was him, there wasn't much they could do. They took down the details, but that was it. The Craigslist ad eventually disappeared, but sometimes I still check just in case it pops up again. I've seen similar ones, same writing style, same quiet household. Always different names. Now whenever people ask how I found babysitting gigs, I just say, not online. I don't explain why. It's easier that way. But sometimes I think about that humming sound behind the wall, those words in the notebook, and the way she said, "my boy." I don't know if he was really her son. I don't even know if his name was Eric. What I do know is that some jobs pay too well for a reason. I never planned on getting a dog that week. It just kind of happened. I was scrolling through Craigslist out of boredom, clicking random categories, and somehow ended up on the pets section. I've been thinking about adopting one eventually, but I wasn't ready to pay shelter fees or deal with paperwork. Then I saw this post titled "Free to Good Home. Golden Retriever, 3 years old, very sweet." The photo showed this perfect-looking dog sitting in the grass with its tongue out. The description said the owner was moving out of state and needed to find a home quickly. It sounded urgent. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the word free. Maybe the picture. Maybe I was just lonely. I texted the number and a woman replied almost immediately. She said her name was Paula and she got to move for work within the week. She said her dog Cooper was great with people and house-trained. She just wanted him to go to someone who'd care for him. We met at a park the next day. Cooper was exactly like the photo. Friendly, calm, perfect. He came right up to me, tail wagging like we'd known each other for years. Paula looked normal enough. Maybe late 30s, dressed casual, seemed a little emotional. She had a leash, a small bag of food, and some paperwork showing vaccination records. I didn't even think twice. I thanked her, promised I'd take care of him, and she smiled and said, "He's yours now." Then she got in her car and drove off. It felt like a good thing at first. Cooper was quiet in the car ride home, just sitting there with his head on my arm. When we got back to my place, he sniffed around, found a corner, and fell asleep. It felt like fate. That first week was easy. He was polite, didn't bark, and followed me everywhere. My friends loved him. I even posted a few pictures on Instagram, and people commented saying he looked like one of those dogs from commercials. Then one evening, about 6 days after I got him, I was watching TV when my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. The text said, "Is this Cooper?" At first, I thought it was spam. I replied, "Who's this?" The next message came instantly. "That's my dog. Please tell me where you got him." I just stared at the screen for a second. I typed back that I'd adopted him from someone named Paula on Craigslist. The reply came fast. "She stole him from my backyard last week. Please, I can prove it." My stomach dropped. I didn't want to believe it. I asked for proof, and within seconds she sent photos. Same dog, same collar, even the same little scar above his nose that I'd noticed the first day. I didn't know what to do. I called her right away. Her voice was shaking. She said her name was Mariah, and that Cooper had gone missing one afternoon while she was at work. Someone had broken the latch on her backyard gate. She'd been posting flyers and online listings trying to find him ever since. When she saw a photo online, she recognized him immediately. I told her I wasn't trying to steal anyone's dog. She said she knew that, and that she just wanted him back. I agreed to meet her the next morning in front of a local police station, just to make it safe for both of us. That night, I didn't sleep much. Hooper lay on the floor beside me, calm and trusting, and I felt horrible. I kept wondering how many people that woman, Paula, had done this to. How many dogs had she taken and flipped for quick cash or whatever she got out of it? When I pulled up to the station the next morning, Maria was already there standing by her car. She looked tired but hopeful. Hooper saw her through the window and immediately started whining. I opened the door and he ran straight to her, tail going crazy. That's when I knew it was real. She thanked me over and over, even hugged me, but I felt awful. I told her the whole story. How I found the post, how normal the woman seemed, how she gave me the fake papers. Maria said she'd already filed a report, but the police couldn't do much without knowing the woman's full name. I gave them Paula's number, the Craigslist link, and screenshots of our messages. They said they'd look into it. The ad disappeared that same day. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started browsing Craigslist again, this time looking for more free pet ads. There were dozens. Most sounded innocent, people moving new babies, allergies, but I started noticing patterns. Some used the same writing style, same punctuation, same phrases like must go soon or very friendly, needs attention. I started messaging a few of them just to see what would happen. A lot of the replies came from the same area code. Some even used the same kind of sad but polite tone as Paula. One message actually used the same closing line she did, just want them to have a loving home. That was when I knew this wasn't just one person being shady. It was something bigger. I sent everything I found to the officer I had spoken to. He said it could be part of a pet flipping ring, which is apparently a thing, people stealing animals and selling or giving them away under fake names. Some even resell them to breeders. He told me there wasn't much to be done unless they caught someone in the act. A week later, I got another message from a different number. It said, "You shouldn't have told her." No name, no context, just that. I blocked it immediately, but it freaked me out. Then I started getting missed calls from random numbers, always around midnight. No voicemails, just hang-ups. After the third night, I called the officer again. He said to ignore them and keep my doors locked. That didn't help much. I barely slept for days. Then one morning, I woke up to find a small paper note taped to my front door. It said, "You gave her back." That's it. No signature. I checked my doorbell camera, but whoever did it stayed out of frame. After that, I stopped answering unknown numbers altogether. The calls eventually stopped, but I still check the peephole every time someone knocks. A few months later, Maria messaged me saying Cooper was doing great. She sent a photo of him running in the yard, happy like before. She said the police never found the woman who stole him. Sometimes I think about how easily it could have gone differently if I hadn't posted that picture or if she hadn't seen it. I might have kept living my life thinking I'd rescued a dog, when in reality I'd been part of someone else's scam. Now, whenever I see those free to good home posts online, I feel this tightness in my chest. I want to warn people, but most wouldn't believe how deep it goes. They think Craigslist scams are all about fake checks or bad renters, not stolen pets. I don't use Craigslist anymore. Not for jobs, not for furniture, nothing. Every time I even open the site, I think about that note on my door. Sometimes late at night, I still imagine a knock. Just one knock. No voice, no footsteps. Just a quiet reminder that someone out there knows exactly where I live. I've been saving up for a new phone for months, and when my old one finally died, I couldn't afford anything brand new. I didn't want to get locked into another contract, so I figured Craigslist was my best bet. I'd used it before for furniture, never had a problem, so I didn't even think twice. I just wanted a decent phone that worked, something not cracked or stolen. I found a listing that looked perfect. iPhone 12, unlocked, $350, great condition. The pictures looked clean, the description short but believable. The seller said they upgraded and didn't need it anymore. The number they listed was local, which made it feel more legit. I texted, and they responded within minutes. The person said their name was Jay. He wrote kind of fast, no small talk, just straight to the point. He said the phone was still available and offered to meet in a shopping center parking lot. I liked that. It was public, busy. He even said I could test the phone before paying. That made me trust it even more. We agreed to meet that afternoon. When I got there, the lot was half full, sunny out, people walking around. I parked near a row of stores and texted him that I'd arrived. A minute later, a gray sedan pulled up beside me. The driver was maybe mid-20s, hoodie up, calm expression. He waved, rolled down the window, and held out the phone. I got out, trying to act confident even though my heart was racing. He handed me the phone. It looked perfect. No cracks, no scratches. I powered it on, and it worked fine. Everything checked out. I asked if it was unlocked, and he nodded, saying it would work with any carrier. After about 5 minutes of checking, I handed him $350 in cash. He counted it, nodded, and said thanks. I watched him drive away, feeling relieved. Easy deal. That night, I set up the phone, transferred my SIM card, and everything worked perfectly. I was happy for about 2 days. Then, out of nowhere, the phone locked itself. The screen went black, then displayed a message. This device has been reported lost or stolen. I thought it was a glitch at first, so I restarted it. Same message. I tried logging into my Apple ID, but it wouldn't let me. I Googled what to do, and that's when I found out it meant the phone had been remotely locked by its original owner. My stomach sank. I tried calling the number Jay gave me, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted, and messages turned green, locked or deleted. I checked the Craigslist ad again, but it was gone. I figured that was it. I got scammed. It sucked, but lesson learned, or so I thought. 2 nights later, I got a text from a new number. It said, "You have something that's mine." I froze. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. "The phone you bought. It's stolen. Meeting where you got it, and maybe we can sort this out." The wording freaked me out. No name, no details, just that. I didn't reply. I tried to ignore it, but the next day I got another one. "You think I can't find you?" That time, I called the police. They told me to stop communicating and file a report. I did, but I could tell they didn't think it was serious. They said it was probably the scammer trying to intimidate me. The following night, around 11 p.m., I was sitting in my room scrolling through my laptop when I heard my car alarm go off outside. I ran to the window, and the driver's side door was open. I sprinted outside, but whoever did it was already gone. The only thing missing was the phone. I'd left it in a glove compartment since it was useless anyway. I called the cops again. They took another report, told me to get a security camera. 2 days later, I got another text from an unknown number. "Next time answer." I blocked it, changed my number, even changed my locks. I didn't sleep much after that. A week passed with no messages, and I started convincing myself it was over. Then one night, I was driving home from work and noticed a car behind me with its lights off. Every turn I made, it followed. I pulled into a gas station, and it kept going, so I tried to laugh it off. When I got home, I opened my mailbox, and inside was a small envelope with no stamp, no return address. Inside was a single photo, my car parked outside my house. No note. That's when I realized this wasn't about the phone anymore. Someone wanted me scared. I told the police again and showed them the photo. They said they'd patrol the area more often, but that didn't help me sleep at night. Then, out of nowhere, the phone showed back up in my iCloud account. It just appeared one morning under my devices. It shouldn't have. Apple had told me it was deactivated. But there it was, listed as active. The location showed it was somewhere across town in a random industrial area. I don't know what possessed me to go, but I did. I told myself I just wanted closure. The address led to an empty parking lot behind a strip of warehouses. I sat in my car with the engine running, watching. There was only one vehicle there, a gray sedan, the same one from the sale. I recognized it immediately. I didn't stay long. I left fast, heart pounding, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Later that night, I got another message. "You shouldn't have come here." I deleted it and turned off my phone, but it didn't stop. The next morning, there was another photo in my email, this time of me sitting in my car outside that same lot. The subject line said, "Now we're even." That was the last message I ever got. I moved apartments a few months later. I changed my number again and stopped using Craigslist completely. I even switched to Android just because I couldn't look at an iPhone without feeling uneasy. Every now and then, I still get spam emails with weird attachments. I never open them, but the sender's names are always different versions of J. Sometimes J Morris, sometimes J Services. It's always just enough to remind me that someone out there still knows who I am. I thought a lot about that first text. You have something that's mine. I used to assume they meant the phone, but now I'm not so sure. Maybe it was something else, my number, my address, my trust. Now, whenever someone mentions buying used phones online, I just tell them to go through a carrier, not some random person. They always roll their eyes like I'm paranoid, but paranoia is not the right word. It's just awareness. I still check my mirrors when I drive at night. I still keep the curtains closed. Sometimes when my phone buzzes in the dark, my first instinct isn't to check who it is. It's to turn it face down and wait. I never thought selling my old wedding dress would turn into something weird. It was just sitting in my closet taking up space, zipped up in that plastic cover from the bridal shop. I'd been divorced for almost 2 years, and it wasn't like I was sentimental about it. Every time I saw it hanging there, it felt like a reminder I didn't need. So one night I took a few pictures, wrote up a quick Craigslist post, and listed it for $300. The listing was short. Used once, size 8, good condition. I didn't even use my real name. I figured someone might want a cheap dress for a wedding or a photo shoot. A few people messaged asking if I'd ship it, but I wanted to do cash only. Then I got a message from a guy named Daniel. He said he was buying it for his fiancée. He was polite, used full sentences, said she'd fallen in love with that exact style. He asked if he could come by that weekend to see it in person. I hesitated at first. It's not every day a guy buys a wedding dress, but I figured maybe his fiancée didn't have time. We agreed to meet at a local coffee shop's parking lot in the middle of the day. Safe, public. He showed up right on time. He looked normal, jeans, sweater, mid-30s, average everything. He smiled, said thanks for meeting, and asked to see the dress. I opened the garment bag and he actually looked nervous, like he didn't want to touch it. He said it was beautiful, that his fiancée would love it. He asked a few questions. What brand, how much it originally cost, how long I'd worn it. I told him it was only worn for a few hours, ceremony and dinner. He nodded a lot and said, she'll be thrilled. Then he handed me $300 in cash, thanked me, and left. It felt like any other transaction. Easy. But 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, why did you sell my dress? At first, I thought it was a joke. I replied asking who it was. The next message came instantly. That was my wedding dress. You sold it to my fiancé. I froze. I typed back that I didn't know what she was talking about, but she sent a photo that made my stomach drop. It was her wearing the same dress in what looked like an engagement photo shoot. I didn't know what to say. She told me she found my number on her fiancé's phone and that she wanted to know how I got the dress. I explained that I bought it years ago for my own wedding. I told her fiancé said he was buying it for her. She went silent for a minute, then sent one last text. He said it was his ex address. That's when it clicked. He wasn't buying it for her. He was buying mine because it looked like the one I wore years ago. That night, I went back through my messages with him. I noticed how he'd asked weirdly specific questions about how long I'd worn it, how it fit, what day I'd got married. It didn't feel like small talk anymore. It felt like he already knew the answers. I went to my old Facebook account, the one I barely used anymore, and sure enough, there was a message request from Daniel H., dated 2 months before I ever listed the dress. I'd ignored it back then because I didn't recognize the name. It just said, you looked beautiful in that dress. I felt sick. I texted the woman again, asked if she was still with him. She didn't answer right away. The next morning, she sent a screenshot of her text thread with him. It showed him denying everything, saying I was lying, saying I was obsessed with him. She said she was done with him and wanted to drop it. I told her to be careful. I figured that was the end of it. I deleted the listing, blocked his number, and tried to forget it. But a week later, I woke up to an email from a random address. The subject said, you shouldn't have lied. The body just said, it wasn't your dress to sell. I blocked the address immediately, but then another email came from a different one. This time it had an attachment. A photo of me standing at that parking lot holding the garment bag, taken from a distance. I called the police that afternoon. They told me unless there was a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. I filed a report anyway. That night, I noticed a car idling across the street from my apartment. Headlights off. It sat there for maybe 10 minutes, then drove away. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. A few days later, the woman texted me again. She said she found something in the dress pocket, a folded piece of paper. It had a note on it that said, "You'll always be mine." I didn't even remember there being pockets. She said she was going to turn it in to the police, but she sounded scared. She told me he'd been calling her nonstop, showing up at her job, saying I set him up. 2 days after that, I got another message. A no number. She shouldn't have told you about the note. I blocked it, changed my number, deleted all my online accounts. But it didn't stop. About a week later, someone left a package at my door. No return address. Inside was a small box with a wedding veil. It wasn't mine, but it looked exactly like the one I wore. That night, my doorbell rang once around midnight. I didn't answer. I just sat there listening. After a minute, it rang again. 2 short presses, then silence. The next morning, I called the police again. They sent someone to check around, but whoever it was had already left. Months went by without anything else happening. Then out of nowhere, I got a Facebook message from a new account. No profile photo, no friends. Just one message. Still fits her perfectly. That was the last thing I ever read from him. I moved to a new apartment not long after. Sold my car, changed jobs, got off social media completely. I don't sell anything online anymore. Not on Craigslist, not anywhere. I only can meet people for Facebook Marketplace stuff. It's not worth it. Sometimes I still think about that woman, though. I wonder if she ever really left him or if she went back. I think about that note in the dress pocket, about how long it must have been there, and who he meant when he wrote it. Every so often, I'll see someone on the street wearing a similar white dress, maybe for a photo shoot or a wedding, and for half a second I feel my heart race. Not because I think it's mine, but because I know how easy it is for someone to turn something innocent like a dress into something that doesn't feel like yours anymore. I don't even keep the garment bag. I threw it out. Now, when people talk about selling things online, they always say meet in public or trust your gut. But nobody talks about what happens after. We've already handed it over and you realize the person wasn't buying the item, they were buying a connection to you. It started because I was broke and desperate, plain and simple. My job hours got cut, rent was due, and I needed quick cash. I wasn't about to start begging my parents again, so I went online looking for anything that paid fast. Craigslist had a gig section I'd never really messed with before, but I figured it was worth a look. Most posts were junk, people asking for assistance with sketchy descriptions or offering $20 to move furniture across town. Then one caught my eye. The title said, "House sitter needed 1 week, quiet property, cash payment." The post was clean, well written, almost too normal. It said they needed someone to watch a small house while the owners were out of town, water plants, bring in the mail, and make sure everything stayed secure. The pay was $600 for 7 days. That was more than half my rent, so I messaged right away. A man named Greg replied within the hour. His tone was polite and professional, like a real job offer. He said the house belonged to him and his wife, and they were visiting family. He mentioned the neighborhood was safe and said I wouldn't have to deal with any guests or deliveries. It sounded perfect. He asked if I could come by to meet before he left, and I said sure. The address he sent was in the edge of town, a quiet residential area near the woods. When I got there, it was early evening. The house was small but neat, white siding, clean driveway, trimmed bushes. Greg answered the door right away. He looked like someone's dad, mid-50s, polo shirt, kind of reserved. He showed me around, explained the routine. Lights on by 7 p.m., lock up before bed, collect any mail. He said they'd already packed and were leaving the next morning. He handed me a spare key and half the payment up front minus $300 in cash. That alone made it feel legit. The next day, I showed up after work, and the house was empty like he said it'd be. I unpacked my bag, sat up on the couch, and flipped on the TV. It felt weird being in someone else's space, but it was calm. The first night passed without anything strange. By the second night, I'd fallen into a little routine. Feed the cat, An older orange one named Milo lock up, then sit on the porch scrolling through my phone. Around midnight, I started hearing this faint noise inside. It sounded like a low creak, like someone walking on the floorboards upstairs. I froze, waited, listened. Then it stopped. I told myself it was the house settling. It was old after all. I went to bed and forgot about it. The next night, same thing. Around midnight, creaking sounds again, slow, uneven. This time I got up and walked through the house. No one there. I checked every room. Doors locked, windows shut. I laughed it off, told myself I was just being jumpy. But when I came back downstairs, something caught my eye. The family photos on the wall by the stairs. There were about 10 of them. I could sworn the night before there were 9. The new one showed Greg and his wife. But in this one, they were standing in the living room, smiling, and behind them was the couch I was currently sleeping on. I just stood there staring at it. Maybe I'd missed it before. Maybe it had always been there. I went back to the couch and tried not to think about it. The next morning, when I walked into the kitchen, I noticed the back door was unlocked. I knew I'd locked it. The latch was one of those old metal ones that makes a loud click. You can't miss it. I checked the house again. Nothing missing. Just the door. That night, I moved one of the chairs from the dining room in front of the back door. I figured if someone came in, I'd hear it. Around midnight, the creaking started again, louder this time. I turned on my phone flashlight and started toward the stairs. Halfway up, Milo hissed and ran into the living room. I froze. Then the sound stopped. I waited for a minute, then backed down the stairs and sat on the couch till morning. The next day, I called Greg. He didn't answer. I left a message saying everything was fine, but asked if anyone else had a key. No reply. I figured maybe he was traveling. That evening, I came home from work and immediately noticed the chair by the back door was moved. Not knocked over or moved. It was sitting against the wall like someone had put it back neatly. I grabbed Milo, locked myself in the bedroom, and texted a friend to come over. By the time he got there, everything looked normal again. He thought I was overreacting, said maybe Greg had someone checking in on the place. I wanted to believe that. The next morning, Greg finally called back. He sounded cheerful, said everything was fine, and that no one else should have been in the house. I told him about the noises at the door, and he chuckled like it was nothing. Old house, he said. They creak at night. Then he asked, "You've been sleeping in the living room, right?" That question stopped me cold. I hadn't told him where I was sleeping. I said yeah, and he just said, "Good. That's where the alarm sensors are most sensitive." I didn't know what that meant, but I didn't ask. That night, I didn't sleep much. I left a light on in every room. Around 2 a.m., I heard the front door creak open, slowly like someone was easing it not to make noise. I sat up, heart pounding. Then I heard footsteps on the tile. I didn't wait. I grabbed Milo, ran to the bedroom, and locked the door. I called 911 and whispered what was happening. I could hear the footsteps moving closer and stopping right outside the door. The dispatcher told me to stay quiet. I held my breath. After maybe 2 minutes, I heard a faint click, like a camera shutter. Then nothing. When the cops arrived, the house was empty again. No forced entry. All doors locked. They searched the place, and in the hall we closed it, they found a small security camera mounted high up in the corner, aimed at the living room. Another was hidden behind a vent in the wall. Both wired, not Wi-Fi, old-style recording equipment. They took it down and asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, of course. But when they checked the registration on the lease and utilities, the house didn't belong to anyone named Greg. The actual owner had died 3 years ago. I told them about the emails and the phone number, but both were deactivated. The Craigslist post was gone too. They said the person must have used a fake name and prepaid phone. I moved out that same night. I didn't even wait to get paid the rest. I left the key on the counter and never went back. A few weeks later, one of the officers called me to follow up. He said they'd found recordings on the camera equipment weeks worth. Most of them showed me just sitting there watching TV, sleeping on the couch. Nothing dramatic. But the last video, the one from that final night, showed a man standing in the hallway, just outside the bedroom door, holding a phone pointed at it. You never see his face. I asked if they found out who he was. They said no, but the cameras were registered under an old security company that hadn't existed for years. Now, every time I see a house sitter needed ad, I scroll right past it. Doesn't matter how good the pay sounds. Sometimes I still think about that question Greg asked me, that weird, calm voice over the phone. You've been sleeping in the living room, right? I wonder if he was checking the camera feed when he said it. I've always been into old stuff. Yard sales, flea markets, secondhand stores. If it's dusty and probably forgotten, I'll dig through it. I like finding things that feel like they've got a story. I used to post my finds on Instagram, call it History Rescue. One night I decided to check Craigslist for something different. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just scrolling the free stuff section for fun. That's when I saw the post. Old family photos and albums, free to anyone interested in history or art. The listing had a few blurry pictures of stacked photo albums and loose prints. The caption said, "Found these in my late grandmother's attic. No family left who wants them." It didn't sound suspicious, just kind of sad. I messaged the poster and he replied quick. Said his name was Trevor and I could swing by any time that weekend to pick them up. He said he just didn't want to throw them away. The next morning, I drove out to the address he gave me. It was a small house on the outskirts of town, kind of worn down but still livable. The yard was overgrown, and there was an old pickup in the driveway with flat tires. When I knocked, a guy in his 40s opened the door. He looked tired but friendly. He said, "You're here for the pictures." I nodded, and he waved me inside. The living room smelled faintly like cigarette smoke and dust. There were boxes everywhere, but the albums were stacked neatly on a table. He said they were from his grandmother's place 2 towns over, and he didn't have the space to keep them. I asked if he was sure he wanted to give them away, and he said, "Yeah, it's just stuff. They're all strangers to me." I thanked him, loaded the boxes into my car, and left. When I got home, I started flipping through the first album. The pictures were mostly from the 70s and 80s, birthdays, backyard barbecues, Christmas mornings. Normal family stuff. A couple of the photos had names written on the back. June 1984, Marlin's house, or Grandpa's 60th. I kind of liked that. It made the people feel real. But the last few pages of the album were weird. The pictures changed from family events to what looked like random outdoor shots, empty streets, houses at night, parked cars, close-ups of windows. The handwriting on the back changed too. Instead of notes like Christmas 1983, it was just dates and times. March 12, 10:47 p.m., June 8, 2:15 a.m. I thought maybe someone in the family had been practicing photography. But the next album was the same. Hundreds of photos, mostly of houses and yards, some with people standing in the distance, facing away from the camera. The third album was worse. It started with pictures of kids playing in parks, then people sitting in restaurants, people walking downtown. None of them were posed. It hit me that these weren't family photos anymore. Someone had been taking pictures of strangers. I pushed the box away for the night. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I went through the rest of the albums. Most of them followed the same pattern: normal family pictures at the start, random night shots later on. The last box only had loose photos inside. I shuffled through them, and one made me stop cold. It was my street. The angle was from the corner, taken at night. My car was parked in the driveway. The porch light was on. On the back, written in the same neat handwriting, was February 17, 11:32 p.m. My chest tightened. I flipped through the rest of the pile, hands shaking. There were more. One of my mailbox, one of my apartment window, one from behind the trees across the street. I didn't even finish looking. I shoved everything back in the box and called the number Trevor had texted me from. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. I tried searching the number online. No name, no listings. I went back to Craigslist and searched for the ad. Gone. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside made me jump. Around 2 a.m., I thought I saw headlights slow down in front of my house. When I peeked through the blinds, there was nothing there. The next morning, I decided I was done with it. I put all the boxes back in my car and drove to the police station. The officer on duty looked through a few of the photos and said it was odd, but unless there were signs of a crime, there wasn't much they could do. He said I could toss them or keep them. I left them there anyway. That night, I got a text from a new number. It said, "You shouldn't have given them away." I froze. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "You looked through them." I blocked the number. I didn't tell anyone about it for a while. I stopped going out after dark. I started leaving my porch light on all night. A few weeks passed with no more messages, and I started to think maybe it was over. Then one morning, I woke up and found a single photo slipped under my front door. It was a picture of me, standing in my driveway, holding one of the photo albums. The timestamp on the back read April 3, 5:12 p.m. I called the cops again, but by the time they came, there was nothing else there. They said it could have been a prank. The next day, I drove back out to that house where I picked up the boxes. I wanted to confront Trevor, or at least make sure he was real. But when I got there, the driveway was empty. The windows were boarded up. There was a bright orange notice on the door that said the property had been abandoned for months. I knocked anyway. No answer. I stood there for a while, just staring at the house, wondering if I'd imagined everything. Then I noticed something wedged between the screen door and the frame, a photo, weathered, edges bent, but clear enough to make out. It was me again, standing exactly where I was at that moment, in front of the house. I didn't stick around. I moved out 2 weeks later, changed my number, and haven't used Craigslist since. Sometimes I still think about those photos, the way they shifted from family memories to strangers' lives. I wonder who started it. Maybe someone inherited the albums and decided to keep adding to them. Or maybe the person who took the pictures never stopped. I don't know if Trevor ever existed. Maybe he was just another name on a post. But every so often when I drive through a neighborhood and see someone standing still with their phone pointed out, I feel that same chill in my chest. Because somewhere, maybe in another box, in another stranger's hands, there's a photo of me from that day, standing in front of that abandoned house, holding someone else's memories, while someone behind a camera took another one for their collection. I was trying to sell my old bike because I needed cash fast. I just started a new job across town and planned to take the bus for a while instead of riding. The bike was in good shape. Blue frame, decent tires, nothing fancy. I listed it for $180 on Craigslist, wrote a short description, added a few photos, and posted it before bed. By morning, I had 4 messages. The first 3 were typical lowball offers, people asking if I'd take $100 or trade for some junk. But the 4th one stood out. It was short, polite, and specific. Hey, I'll take it for full price if it's still available. Can meet this afternoon. Cash only. The name was Even. I texted him back, told him it was still available, and we set a time to meet in front of the grocery store near my place. He said he didn't want to meet at his house because neighbors were nosy. I didn't think much about it. I'd sold stuff in parking lots before, never had a problem. When he showed up, he looked totally normal: jeans, jacket, baseball cap, maybe mid-30s. He seemed friendly enough. He looked over the bike for about a minute, lifted it, spun the wheels, and said it was perfect. He handed me 9 $20 bills, thanked me, and I handed him the bike. He rode off down the street, and that was that. About 2 hours later, I got a text from him. Hey, do you have the original purchase receipt? I said no, I bought it secondhand years ago. He didn't reply. The next morning, I got another message. You sure you bought it used? That one threw me off. I replied yes, that I bought it from a pawn shop a long time ago. He replied, weird. There's a name scratched under the seat. Doesn't match yours. I went back through my photos, zoomed in, and sure enough, there was something carved into the underside of the seat that I'd never noticed. It looked like a name, T. Manson. I figured maybe it was the first owner. I texted Even back, said I didn't know who that was. He replied, you should. I didn't answer after that. It felt like he was trying to start something. The following night, around 11 p.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but it went to voicemail. When I played it back, it was just breathing at first, then a man's voice saying, that wasn't yours to sell. I blocked the number immediately, but my stomach was in knots. I tried to tell myself it was some random prank. 2 days later, I came home from work and saw a folded piece of paper wedged into my front door. It said, give it back. Nothing else. I checked my locks twice that night and even considered calling the cops, but what was I going to say? Someone was mad about a used bike. The next day, I got another message from a new number. You read the engraving wrong. Look again. That freaked me out. There was no way he could have known I looked at the photo again, unless he'd been watching me. I grabbed my phone, zoomed in on the picture once more, and noticed something I hadn't before. The name wasn't just T. Manson. Underneath it, scratched faintly into the metal, were 2 more words, found me. That night, I went to the police. They took a report but didn't seem to take it seriously. They said if he contacted me again, I should keep the messages as evidence. The next morning, the messages stopped. I figured it was over. A few days later, my friend Josh texted me saying he'd seen someone riding what looked like my old bike near the bus station. I asked what the guy looked like, and he said he didn't really notice. Just that the guy was moving slow, like he didn't know how to ride. That stuck in my head for some reason. That night, when I got home, I noticed something sitting on my porch, a piece of the bike's handlebar grip. Torn off, worn down at the edges. I hadn't seen that thing in days. I checked my security camera footage. Around 3:40 a.m., someone walked up my driveway, left something on the porch, and walked away. The video was grainy, but the person had the same jacket even wore. I called the cops again and sent them the video. They said they'd patrol the area. I barely slept that night. The next morning, when I checked my phone, there was a text waiting for me from a new number again. It said, "You still haven't looked under the seat." I didn't know what that meant. The bike was gone. But then I remembered. I had the seat cover still. I'd taken it off before selling it because it was torn. I went out to my shed where I'd tossed it. It looked normal at first, but when I turned it over, there was something inside. A small folded photo, yellowed and creased. I unfolded it. It showed a man standing next to the same bike, but older, and the picture was from years ago. The man was smiling, holding the handlebars. I flipped it over, and on the back, in the same handwriting as the engraving, it said, "Don't sell what isn't yours." I went straight back to the police. They took the photo, said they'd add it to the report, but again, no updates. The text stopped for a while after that. Weeks went by. Then one night, I got a knock at the door around midnight. I froze, didn't move. Whoever it was knocked again. 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced. I peeked through the curtain, and there was a bike leaned up against my porch railing, the same one. When I opened the door, nobody was there. Just the bike, standing upright like someone had carefully placed it there. The frame was scratched up, the front tire flat, but it was definitely mine. On the handlebars, taped with clear plastic, was another note. It said, "You can keep it now." I didn't touch it. I just closed the door and called the police again. When they came, they checked the bike and ran the serial number. The officer looked confused and said the bike wasn't listed under my name or anyone else's. The registry showed it as unclaimed property from an evidence file dated 5 years earlier. He asked where I bought it. I told him the pawn shop, but when he checked, the shop had been closed for 2 years. They took the bike for processing. The next morning, I got one final text. It said, "He's home now." That was it. No number, no name. I haven't heard anything since. Sometimes I still dream about that engraving. The way it looked like it was carved slowly, carefully, like someone wanted it to be seen later. I think about that man in the photo, how happy he looked. Maybe the bike really did belong to him once, and somehow it ended up with me. Or maybe someone else believed it did. Now, whenever I see people selling bikes online, I always look for the seat in the pictures, just to see if there's anything carved underneath. And every once in a while when I walk to the store at night, I still feel like I can hear the faint sound of a bike chain turning behind me. Steady, slow, like it's trying to keep pace. I used to sell old stuff all the time. Furniture, electronics, random junk I didn't want anymore. Craigslist was my go-to. It always felt simple. Meet in public, cash deal done. No issues. But that changed when I tried selling my mattress. I had upgraded to a new one, and the old one was still in decent shape. No stains, no damage. I listed it for $100, wrote pickup only, and posted a few photos. Within an hour, I got a message from a guy named Rob. His reply was short, "Still available. I can come tonight." I said sure, gave him the general area, but not my full address yet. He said he'd bring cash and asked if I could send a few more photos from different angles. I figured that was normal. People like to make sure things are clean. I took a couple extra pictures, one of the top, one of the side, one of the tag, and sent them. He replied with a thumbs up and said he'd be there around 7. He showed up right on time. He looked normal, maybe early 40s, average build, polite voice. He handed me $100, counted perfectly. Then he asked if I could help him load the mattress into his van. It wasn't heavy, so I helped. When we got to his van, I noticed it was spotless inside. No seats in the back, just a perfectly clean cargo space with a tarp laid down. He placed the mattress inside carefully, then turned to me and said, "You kept it really nice." I said thanks. Then he asked if I'd ever taken pictures of myself on it. That stopped me cold. I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe he was joking. He didn't laugh. He just smiled slightly and said, "I like to know the story behind what I buy." I didn't say anything. He got in his van, waved, and drove off. I went inside, trying to shake the weirdness off. Later that night, around 10 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "You look better sitting on it than standing next to it." I stared at the screen for a minute, confused. I texted back, "Who is this?" No reply. I checked the number against Rob's, and it wasn't the same. Still, something about it made my stomach twist. I went back to the photos I'd sent earlier. None of them had me in them. So how would he know what I looked like sitting on it? I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he found my listing profile photo. But Craigslist doesn't show pictures of sellers unless you link an account. I haven't. The next morning, I got another message. This one said, "You had the window open when you took the pictures." That made my hands go cold. I went back to check the photos again, and sure enough, you could see a reflection in one of them. A faint outline of me holding the phone. And in the window behind me, there was another reflection, a shape that wasn't mine. It looked like someone standing outside. I zoomed in, but it was blurry. I couldn't make it out. I tried calling the number that had texted me, but it rang once and went to voicemail. No greeting, just silence. That night, I noticed a van parked down the street. It was dark, couldn't see the color, but it looked like his. Same shape. I tried to get a better look, but when I stepped outside, the headlights flashed on and it drove off. I barely slept. The next day, I called the police. They told me unless I had proof of someone threatening me, there wasn't much they could do. They offered to send a patrol by, but no one showed. Around 8 that evening, I got another text. "You didn't wash the sheets before I came, did you?" I didn't reply. I blocked the number. An hour later, I got a message from another new number. It said, "Blocking me doesn't stop me from seeing you." I threw my phone across the couch. I ended up calling my friend Mark, told him everything. He laughed at first, said I was probably overthinking it. I sent him the screenshots, and he stopped laughing. He told me to come stay at his place for a few nights. When I was packing, I heard a car door close outside. I peeked through the blinds and saw that same van parked halfway down the block. The engine was off, but the headlights were faintly glowing like it was in idle mode. I didn't wait. I grabbed my bag and left through the back door, walked 3 blocks before calling a rideshare to Mark's apartment. I stayed there for 3 days. No messages. I figured maybe he gave up. On the 4th day, I went back to my place to grab some clothes. When I opened the door, everything looked normal, except for one thing. On the floor of my bedroom, there was an envelope. No name, no return address. Inside was a photo, my old mattress, sitting in a completely bare room. And on it, a new set of sheets. My sheets. On the back, written in marker, was "perfect condition." I called the cops again, showed them the photo. They asked if I was sure it was my mattress. I said yes. I recognized a small rib on the corner. They told me to stay with someone for a while, just in case. I moved in with Mark for the rest of the month. About a week later, I was scrolling online and came across another Craigslist ad. The headline said, "Like new mattress minus $100. The photo made my stomach drop. It was mine. Same rip, same tag. But this time, the description was different. It said, "Clean, used lightly, special history." I clicked the contact info and my heart almost stopped. The number listed was mine. I tried calling it just to make sure. My phone didn't ring. I tried again. Nothing. The next day, my inbox filled up with emails from random addresses asking about the mattress. People saying they wanted to buy it, asking where I was located. I never listed my address on Craigslist. That's when I realized someone had copied my identity and reposted the listing using my info. I deleted my account, changed my number, and filed another report. The officer said it could have been a scammer trying to redirect buyers, but I knew that wasn't it. Whoever did it wasn't after money. They were after attention. Mine. The messages finally stopped after that. But even now, sometimes I see vans parked outside my new place. And every single time, I think about that guy and what he said before driving off. I like to know the story behind what I buy. I can't use Craigslist anymore. Every time I even see the logo, I feel that same chill crawl up my neck. I still have the photo, the one from the envelope. It's tucked in a drawer I never open. Because sometimes I swear, when I read it again months later, there was a new detail I hadn't noticed before. In the corner of that empty room, just barely visible in the shadows, was a shape, like someone standing against the wall, facing the mattress. When I first listed my spare room, I wasn't trying to be a landlord or anything. I just needed help with rent. My roommate had moved out unexpectedly, and I couldn't cover everything alone. I figured it'd be simple. Find someone normal, split bills, no drama. I cleaned the room, took some photos, and made a Craigslist ad that said, room for rent, month to month, $600 utilities included. I added that it was in a quiet neighborhood and that I preferred someone clean and reliable. The first few replies were a mix of scammers and weirdos. Then I got one from a guy named Kyle. His message was short but polite. He said he worked nights, was quiet, and could move in immediately. That last part got me. I needed rent money fast. We talked on the phone that evening. His voice sounded calm, kind of flat, like someone who didn't say more than necessary. He said he'd bring the first month's rent in cash and could stop by the next day to see the room. When he showed up, he looked completely average, jeans, hoodie, short haircut, nothing sketchy. He didn't even walk around much. He just looked at the room, nodded, and said it would work. He handed me an envelope with $600 inside, counted perfectly, and asked if he could start moving that weekend. I said sure. That weekend, he arrived with barely anything, 2 suitcases, a duffel bag, and a small box. No furniture, no decorations. He told me he liked to travel light. I didn't care as long as the rent kept coming. At first, everything was fine. He stayed in his room most of the time, didn't make noise, didn't cook much. The only weird thing was how quiet he was. I'd hear him walking at odd hours, like 3 or 4 a.m., but never leaving the house. He said he worked nights, but I never actually saw him go anywhere. A couple weeks in, I started noticing small things. The kitchen light would be on in the middle of the night, even though I knew I'd turn it off. The fridge door left slightly open. Once, I found a chair from the dining table moved next to the hallway closet. I asked him about it, and he said he'd been checking the ceiling. Bet. It didn't make sense, but I let it go. Then one morning, I woke up to the front door wide open. The deadbolt wasn't broken, just unlocked. Kyle's door was closed, and I could hear him moving around inside. I knocked and asked if he'd gone out late. He said no, maybe I'd forgotten to lock it. That night, I started double-checking everything. Door locks, windows, even the back gate. I began keeping my wallet and keys in my room instead of leaving them by the door. A week later, I came home from work and found Kyle sitting at the kitchen table in total darkness. No lights, just him sitting there, hands folded. I flipped the switch and tried to act casual. He smiled, said he'd been thinking. I asked about what, and he said, how quiet it gets here at night. I laughed awkwardly and went straight to my room. The next morning, there was a note slid under my door. It said, "Do you hear it too?" No name, just that line. I went to knock on his door, but he wasn't there. His stuff was still in the room, but the bed was untouched, sheets folded perfectly. That night, he came back around 2 a.m. I heard the front door creak and his footsteps moving slowly through the hall. I waited until morning to ask where he'd gone, but when I finally saw him, he acted completely normal. Said he'd been at work. That's when I noticed something new. His door had a lock now. A padlock. From the outside. I didn't remember seeing it before. One day, while he was gone, I knocked lightly just to see if he was home. No response. I know I shouldn't have, but I pushed the door open. The room was spotless. No bed sheets, no clothes, no personal items. Just a small desk and a chair. On the desk was a single notebook. I opened it. Every page was filled with notes about the house. Not about me, not about bills, about the house. Front lock, weak latch. Back window, loose hinge. Noise from attic, 2:47 a.m. Each entry had a time and date. Some had little sketches of the floor plan. The last entry said, "Roommate doesn't hear it yet." I closed the notebook fast and left the room. When he came back that night, he didn't say a word, just walked straight to his room and locked the door. The next few nights were worse. I'd hear soft knocks at random times, sometimes on my wall, sometimes from the hallway. Once, I swear I heard whispering coming through the vent. I thought maybe I was losing it, so I set up my phone to record audio while I slept. The next morning, I played it back. For the first 3 hours, it was silence. Then, around 3:18 a.m., there was a sound like someone breathing close to the microphone. After that, a whisper, "He's still awake." I stopped the recording immediately and packed a bag. When I left the house, I texted Kyle saying I needed to stay with a friend for a few days. He didn't reply. The next afternoon, I went back with a friend to grab the rest of my stuff. The front door was unlocked again. Inside, everything looked the same, except his door. It was wide open. The room was completely empty. No desk, no chair, no notebook. Just an outline on the carpet where furniture had been. The only thing left behind was another note taped to the wall. It said, "You hear it now." We called the police, but there was nothing to report. No damage, no theft, no sign of forced entry. They said he probably just left. I changed the locks that same night and started looking for a new place. A week later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said room listing, and the message was just a link. I clicked it before thinking. It was a Craigslist ad. Room for rent, quiet area, $600, utilities included. The photo was my old living room. I don't know if Kyle made that listing or someone else did, but I moved out 2 days later and never looked back. Sometimes late at night, when I can't sleep, I still think about that notebook. The dates, the sketches, the line that said, "Roommate doesn't hear it yet." And I wonder what he meant by it. I'd never done anything like modeling before. Honestly, I wasn't even looking for that kind of work. I just wanted to make extra cash between classes. I was scrolling through Craigslist under the creative gigs section because someone told me you could find paid photography stuff there, small projects, local ads, things like that. Most listings were weird or vague, but one caught my eye. The post said, "Looking for new faces for a local clothing project. No experience needed. Payment $200 per session. Casual wear only." It sounded harmless. The photos on the listing showed people in normal clothes, jeans, t-shirts, nothing sketchy. The ad mentioned a small photography collective working on a social media campaign. I figured maybe they needed college students to pose in clothes for local brands. The pay was good for a few hours of work. I emailed them that night. The reply came within an hour. The sender's name was Darren. He said they liked my look and asked if I could come for a test shoot that weekend. He said the studio was in a converted warehouse just outside the city, and I could bring a friend if I wanted. That last part made it sound more legit. Saturday morning, I grabbed a friend named Lena and drove out there. The address was real. An old industrial building turned into what looked like art spaces and small studios. When we walked in, there were a few photography setups around. Backdrops, lights, props. A couple of people were moving equipment. It actually felt professional. Darren came over to greet us. He looked like any average guy in his 30s, hoodie, sneakers, a camera slung around his neck. He thanked me for coming, offered us water, and gave a quick rundown. He said they were testing lighting and wardrobe combinations for a local clothing line. He showed me a rack of clothes. Plain t-shirts, hoodies, and jeans. Totally normal. He said it'd take about an hour. Lena sat off to the side scrolling on her phone while I changed into one of the outfits. The first half hour was fine. He gave directions like a real photographer. Look left. Turn your chin. Try smiling less. He took a ton of shots, adjusted lights, and checked the camera screen after each set. Nothing about it felt strange until he said he wanted to try something more candid. He told me to sit on this worn-out couch they had near the wall. The lighting was dimmer now, and he said he wanted to capture a relaxed, natural vibe. I did as he said. Then he asked me to look away like you're thinking about something. I did that too. But then he started talking quieter, more to himself. Stuff like, "Yeah, that's the look, and she doesn't even realize it." It was barely audible, but I heard it. My stomach tightened a bit, but I didn't move. After a few more minutes, he said he wanted to switch locations. He asked if I was okay going to the second set of the back room. It wasn't far, maybe 20 feet away, but it was darker and didn't have any windows. I looked at Lena, and she gave me this subtle look like, "You sure about this?" I said, "Maybe we should just stick to the front space." Darren smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He said, "Sure, no problem," and walked off to grab something. A minute later, one of the other guys working there came over and whispered something to Lena. She stood up fast, grabbed my arm, and said we were leaving. I was confused, but she didn't stop walking until we were outside. When I asked what happened, she said the guy told her quietly, "You shouldn't be here. This isn't what you think it is." We got in the car and drove straight home. That night, I got an email from Darren. It said, "You left before we finished. I still need those photos cleared. Please reply." I didn't. The next morning, there was another message, longer this time. "You signed the release form, remember? We can still use the images. You were great to work with. Let's schedule the next session soon." I had signed something. He handed it to me when we arrived and said it was just a basic consent form for photography. I hadn't even read it properly. Lena told me to ignore him, so I did. But a few days later, my Instagram DMs started filling with random accounts tagging me in photos I'd never seen. They were the pictures from that day. The lighting was different, edited to look gritty, almost moody. The captions were things like "real emotion" and "caught in thought." The worst part was the comments, strangers saying things like "she looks lost," and "you can feel it in her eyes." I tried reporting the posts, but they'd already been reposted by other accounts. I emailed Darren again, demanding he take them down. He replied within minutes, "They're part of the project now, you agreed." I stopped replying after that. Over the next few weeks, new photos kept popping up. Angles I didn't remember him taking. One of me standing near the window, another of me walking toward the door. Then one that made my blood run cold. It was me sitting on the couch, staring off, but in the background, you could clearly see Lena watching with this uneasy expression. I deleted my social media after that. About a month later, I read an article online titled "Craigslist Modeling Scam Linked to Stolen Content." It mentioned fake photographers using test shoots to collect personal images, sometimes selling them to underground sites for advertising or AI training. One of the aliases mentioned was Darren Dolly. I clicked the link to the attached report, and there was a small thumbnail of a familiar photo beyond that same couch. I called the police and filed a report. They said unless I could prove the identity of the person or show the original files, there wasn't much they could do. I thought that was the end of it until a few months later, when Lena texted me late one night. She said she'd gotten a message on Facebook from an account she didn't recognize. It was a link to a new Craigslist ad. The title said, "Seeking models for a new social project. $200 per session." The photos in the listing? Mine. Same clothes, same poses, same studio background. Except now, the ad used a different name, Photography by Eric. I reported it, and the ad disappeared after a day. But a week later, it was back again under a different name. Always the same pattern, same photos, same text, different email. After a while, I stopped checking. Sometimes I still get random emails with no subject line, just a link to an image. I never click them, but I can tell by the previews they're old photos of me from that day. People always tell me to laugh it off, say it's just the internet. But they don't understand that moment when you realize someone out there has pieces of you, literal snapshots of who you were, and they can keep bringing them back anytime they want. I don't use Craigslist anymore. I don't even take selfies. And when I pass by old warehouses, I never look too long, because part of me feels like he's still there, camera in hand, waiting for someone else to answer the ad. I don't know what made me think buying a used fridge online was a good idea. Maybe it was because I'd just moved into a new place and already blown half my savings on rent and a deposit. The kitchen was empty, and I couldn't afford a new fridge from a store, so I figured Craigslist was my best shot. I'd bought stuff on there before, a couch, a microwave, even a TV stand, and it had always worked out fine. I spent a few hours scrolling through listings. Most of them were junk or way too far away. Then I saw one that caught my eye. Working fridge, good condition, $150, must pick up today. The photos looked clean, white, no rust, no dents. The description said it had been lightly used in a guest house. I messaged the seller right away. The name on the post was Ron. He replied within 10 minutes, said he was moving and needed it gone fast. He told me to come by after 6 p.m. and that he'd help me load it. He gave me an address on the edge of town, about 20 minutes away. When I got there, the sun was already going down. The house looked normal enough, one story, trimmed lawn, a for sale sign in the yard. A tall guy in a baseball cap was waiting out front. He waved and said, "You're here for the fridge, right?" I nodded, and he led me around the back to the garage. The fridge was sitting there plugged in and running. I opened it, cold air hit my face, and looked spotless inside. He told me it worked perfectly, and that I could have it for $130 if I took it that night. That sounded like a deal, so I handed him the cash. He helped me load it into my truck, shook my hand, and said, "Glad it's going to someone who will use it." I thanked him and drove home. When I got back, I plugged it in right away. It hummed quietly and cooled down fast. Everything seemed fine, except for this faint, weird smell, kind of metallic, kind of sweet. I figured it was just from being unplugged for a while. The next day, I cleaned it out completely, wiped every surface, and left the door open to air out. That helped for a bit, but by the following night, the smell came back stronger. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. When I pulled out the bottom drawers, I noticed the plastic was warped, like something heavy had been sitting there for a long time. Underneath, the base of the fridge was slightly discolored, stained yellowish brown. I scrubbed it with bleach, but the smell didn't go away. After a few days, it started to bug me more. The odor wasn't just unpleasant. It was sharp, almost chemical. I decided to pull the fridge away from the wall to see if something had spilled underneath. When I did, I noticed 4 small screws holding the back panel in place. Out of curiosity, I grabbed a screwdriver and removed them. Behind the panel was a compartment full of insulation foam and wiring, but wedged into one corner was a small sealed plastic bag. I hesitated before touching it. When I finally pulled it out, I realized it wasn't just one bag. It was 3, taped together. They were old, slightly yellowed, and packed tightly with something dark inside. For a second, I thought it was just dirt or maybe coffee grounds, but when I looked closer, it didn't look like that. I cut open a corner of one bag, and a thick reddish-brown powder spilled out. It smelled awful. I dropped it immediately and backed away. I didn't know what to do. I called my brother, who used to work maintenance at an apartment complex, and told him what I found. He told me to stop touching everything and call the police. When they came, they took the bags and started asking questions. Where I got the fridge, who sold it, what address, what time. I told them everything. They took down Ron's info from my messages and said they'd look into it. For the next few days, I didn't hear anything. I bought a cheap mini fridge and kept avoiding the big one sitting unplugged in my kitchen. Then one afternoon, I got a call from an officer. He said the bags were being tested and that they contained biological material. He wouldn't say what exactly, just said it was being treated as evidence. He asked if I could describe Ron again, so I did. Tall, white, baseball cap, mid-40s maybe. The officer was quiet for a second, then asked, "Did he seem nervous?" I said no. He said, "All right, we'll be in touch." A few days later, I noticed an unmarked car parked across from my street. I didn't think much of it at first, but it stayed there for hours. When I went outside, it drove off. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. It said he should just use the fridge. I froze. I called the number immediately, but it was disconnected. The next day, I went to the police station and showed them the message. They said they'd already been looking into the seller, but the name Ron and the phone number he used were fake. The address he gave me. The house had been empty for months. The for sale sign out front was real, but the listing had expired over a year ago. They told me they traced similar Craigslist listings to different names and numbers, all leading nowhere. Sometimes the item was a fridge, sometimes a freezer, sometimes just appliances. Always for quick cash. That night, I barely slept. Every noise outside made me jump. Around 2 a.m., I heard something metallic clang against my back door. I grabbed a flashlight and looked out the kitchen window. The fridge was still unplugged, sitting where I'd left it, but there was something taped to the handle, a folded note. I opened the door slowly and peeled it off. The note said, "This one's clean. Promise." I called the police again, but by the time they arrived, the note was gone. They searched around and found tire tracks in the driveway. The same officer from before looked at me and said, "You're not the only one. Whoever's doing this is targeting random buyers. He wants them to find something. They took the fridge as evidence the next day. A few weeks later, I read an article online about a case involving Craigslist appliance sales under investigation. The article said the fridges contained bags of animal tissue used in some kind of illegal dumping scheme. The police believed it was meant to scare buyers so they'd dump the fridges before reporting anything. But what didn't make sense was the text. Other buyers had gotten them too, from numbers that disappeared afterward. I wish that's where it ended. About a month later, I got another text. Different number this time. It said, "Need a new one? $150. Works great." There was a picture attached. My old kitchen. That was when I moved. I bought my next fridge straight from the store, brand new. I paid extra for delivery and didn't even unpack it myself. I still check the back panel sometimes, though, just to make sure. Every once in a while, I'll see a listing online for used appliances, must go tonight, and I scroll right past it. I don't even want to know who's selling them. Because somewhere out there, someone's still posting. And every post starts the same way. Working fridge. Lightly used. Must pick up today. I wasn't even planning to buy a coffee table that day. I was bored, scrolling through Craigslist while eating cereal, just wasting time before work. My living room looked empty though, and I figured a table might make it feel less like I just moved in. I didn't want to spend more than $50, and I wasn't picky. Just something solid that didn't look like garbage. I found one that looked perfect. The title said, "Solid Oak Coffee Table, $40, must pick up." The pictures showed a nice-looking table, dark wood, slightly scratched but sturdy. The post said it was handmade, very old family piece. The name listed was Angela. I messaged her right away, and she responded almost immediately, polite and normal. She said I could come by that evening and that her husband would help me load it into my car. The address she sent was in an older part of town, mostly small houses with long driveways. I got there around 6:30, and a man was already outside waiting. He was older, maybe mid-50s, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans. He smiled and said, "You're here for the table." He led me into the garage, which was clean but dimly lit. The table was right there in the center, bigger than I expected. It looked heavy but well made. He said it belonged to his wife's grandmother and that they just didn't have space for it anymore. I looked it over. No cracks, no wobbling legs. It was easily worth more than $40. I paid him, and he helped me load it into my car. Before I left, he said, "Be careful moving it. It's old wood. It doesn't like being left alone." I laughed awkwardly, not sure what he meant, and drove off. When I got home, I set the table right in front of my couch. It looked perfect. The dark wood matched the flooring, and the scratches gave it some character. That night, I watched TV with my dinner resting on it, proud of my find. The next morning, when I woke up, my cereal bowl from the night before was sitting on the floor. I must have knocked it off without realizing, I thought. But the table was moved too, shifted a few inches toward the couch. I didn't remember bumping it, but maybe I had. I brushed it off and went to work. When I got home that evening, something else was off. My TV remote, which I'd left on the couch, was sitting on the table. Again, I figured maybe I'd just forgotten, but a weird feeling crept in. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to a dull sound, like wood creaking. I thought it was the floorboards, but it was rhythmic, steady. I turned on the lamp. The table was moved again, just a few inches closer to the couch. The next morning, I measured its distance from the wall with tape. I wanted to see if I was imagining things. Before leaving for work, I snapped a picture. When I came home that night, it had moved again, about 4 inches forward. The photo proved it. I stood there staring at it for a good minute. My brain was trying to make sense of it. I checked under the table, around it, inside the drawers, nothing. I even looked for bugs or small animals, thinking maybe something had crawled inside, but there was nothing there. That night, I couldn't relax. I kept glancing at the table every few minutes, waiting to see it move. It didn't, not while I was awake. But when I woke up in the morning, it was closer again, so close now that one corner nearly touched the couch. And that's when I noticed something else. Scratched faintly into the wood under the tabletop, like it had been carved with something sharp, were the words, "Devo aniti emuvi me." I didn't know if I was more confused or scared. Maybe I'd missed it before. Maybe it was some kind of joke by the previous owner. I texted the number Angela had used to message me. I wrote, "Hey, weird question, but did you know there's something carved into the bottom of the table?" No reply. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. New message from the same number. It said, "Stop moving it." I froze. I texted back, "I haven't moved it. What's going on?" No reply. That night, I decided to drag the thing out to my porch. I didn't even care how crazy it looked. I wasn't keeping that in my house anymore. It was heavier than I remembered, but I managed to shove it outside and lock the door. When I woke up the next morning, the table was back inside, sitting in the same spot it had been before. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't even remember hearing anything. I called a friend, told him the whole thing. He thought I was joking until I sent him pictures. He came over that night with his truck, and we agreed to get rid of it. We drove to a donation center and dropped it off in their after-hours area behind the building. I felt relieved driving away. But the next morning, there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and a man in a blue apron from the donation center was standing there. He looked nervous. He said, "Did you draw off a coffee table last night?" I nodded. He said, "We can't take it." It was marked. I asked what he meant. He said there was tape on the underside with a note that said, "Belongs to Angela. Return if found." I told him I bought it from Angela. He said, "No, this note looks old, like years old." I told him to just keep it. He shook his head, said he couldn't, and left it right there on my porch. I didn't even bring it inside this time. I called the local junk removal place and paid $60 to have it hauled off. They came that afternoon, loaded it onto their truck, and drove off. I watched it lay turn the corner, making sure it was gone for good. That night, I finally slept well. But around 2 a.m., I woke up to a single loud thud from the living room. My stomach dropped. I turned on the light, heart pounding, and walked out slowly. The table was back. Same spot. I stared at it for what felt like forever, waiting for it to move again. It didn't. But when I finally got close enough, I saw a new scratch on the surface. Fresh. It said, "You should have listened." The next day, I packed my stuff and moved out. I didn't care about breaking my lease. I read online later that people sometimes find carvings or writing on old furniture, usually from the original makers or families who owned it before. But none of the stories mentioned tables that followed people home. I never went back to that part of town, and every time I drive past a for sale sign in someone's yard, I think of that garage, the man smiling politely while I handed him $40 the way he said, "Doesn't like being left alone." He wasn't joking. I moved into my apartment with almost nothing. I had a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, and a milk crate for a coffee table. I wasn't broke exactly, but between rent, deposits, and utilities, furniture was the last thing on my mind. Still, sitting on the floor every night got old fast. So I did what everyone does when they're broke and need furniture. I went on Craigslist and typed free. The first few listings were typical junk, torn recliners, musted futon's, things left on curbs. But then one stood out. The title just said, "Free couch. Must take tonight." There were no fancy words, no emojis, no sales pitch. Just one photo, a big dark gray couch in what looked like a living room. The floor under it was spotless, and the message underneath said, "Moving out. Need gone before midnight. First come, first serve." It was perfect. I texted the number right away. A guy named Matt replied almost instantly. He said the couch was clean, not broken, and that he could help me load it if I got there soon. The address was about 20 minutes away. When I pulled up, the house looked normal, quiet neighborhood, one porch light on. The driveway was empty, so I parked on the street. I texted him saying I was there, and the front door opened almost immediately. A guy in his late 30s stepped out, wearing a gray hoodie. He waved and said, "You're here for the couch." I nodded. He told me to back my car up to the side door since it was closer to the living room. I did, leaving my headlights on to see better. When I went inside, the place was half empty. No decorations, no boxes, just a few pieces of furniture. The couch was in great shape. Big, soft, a little worn on the armrests, but otherwise perfect. I told him I couldn't believe he was giving it away. He laughed and said, "Can't take it where I'm going." I helped him carry it outside and load it up. When we were done, He just said, "Thanks for taking it," and walked back inside without another word. I got home a little after 11. The couch barely fit through my door, but I managed to wedge it in with some effort. I set it against the wall, turned on the TV, and crashed onto it. It was way more comfortable than it looked. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a dull sound, a faint thump coming from under the couch. I sat up, thinking maybe something had fallen behind it. I turned on the light, checked around, found nothing. I figured I'd imagined it. The next morning, when I walked into the living room, the couch cushions were all slightly off-center, like someone had sat there during the night. I live alone. That day, while cleaning, I noticed something weird on the underside of the couch. When I lifted one corner, I saw what looked like a small zipper running along the bottom fabric. I unzipped it out of curiosity, expecting maybe a tag or something. Instead, there was a small envelope taped to the wooden frame inside. It was old yellowed, sealed shut. No name, no writing. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were 2 Polaroid photos. The first one showed a living room, different from mine, but the same couch. In the photo, there was a man sitting on it, head tilted slightly, eyes closed. The second photo showed the same man, but now lying down, pale still. I dropped them immediately. I didn't know what to do. I called my friend Tyler, told him about it, and he came over. He thought I was messing with him until he saw the photos. Then he said, "Dude, you need to call the cops." I didn't want to. It felt over the top. It could have been some weird art project or prank. But the more I thought about it, the more it freaked me out. I decided I'd take the couch back to the curb in the morning and be done with it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke up again to that same thump from under the couch. This time, it was louder, rhythmic. I turned on every light in the apartment and flipped the couch over. Nothing was there. No bugs, no wires, nothing. But the cushions smelled faintly metallic, like old pennies. I threw a blanket over it and went back to my bedroom. I left the lights on. The next morning, I called the police. They sent 2 officers who looked tired and disinterested. I told them the story, showed them the photos. They asked where I'd gotten the couch, so I gave them the address and the guy's number. One of the officers called it straight to voicemail. The other ran the address. After a few minutes, he said, "That property's been vacant for 3 months." I told him that wasn't possible. I was just there the night before. He shrugged and said sometimes squatters use old houses. They took the envelope and photos and told me to dispose of the couch if it made me uncomfortable. After they left, I dragged the couch up to the curb, threw a free sign on it, and went inside. I wanted it gone. When I woke up the next morning, it was gone. I felt relieved. That night, though, around midnight, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "Thanks for bringing it back." I didn't reply. An hour later, there was a knock on my door. Soft, slow, 3 knocks. I froze, didn't move. After a few seconds, another 3 knocks. I peeked through the peephole, no one there. The next morning, my neighbor told me she'd seen a guy sitting on my curb in the middle of the night. Said he looked like he was waiting for someone. I didn't go to work that day. I packed a bag and went to stay with Tyler. A few days later, I drove past my old place just to check. The couch was back, sitting in front of my door. No note this time. I didn't stop. I kept driving. A week later, I read an article online about a property fire in the same area where I'd picked up the couch. The house had burned down completely. The report said no one was supposed to be living there, but firefighters found evidence someone had been staying inside recently: a sleeping bag, a few dishes, and a couch. The photo in the article made my stomach drop. It was the same couch. I moved to a different city after that. Bought all new furniture. I don't take free stuff anymore, not even from friends. Sometimes late at night, when I can't sleep, I'll hear a sound like soft tapping, almost like someone knocking from another room. It's quiet, steady, like that rhythm I used to hear under the couch. I tell myself it's the pipes for the wind, but deep down I know it sounds too much like wood. And every once in a while, when I check Craigslist out of habit, I'll see a new listing. The title is always the same: "Free couch, must take tonight." It started when I moved into my first place alone. The apartment wasn't anything special, small second floor, smelled faintly like old carpet, but it was mine. I didn't have much furniture, Just a bed and a folding table, and I figured I'd get the rest slowly. The problem was, I didn't have any boxes for unpacking or organizing. I had clothes, kitchen stuff, and random things all over the floor. So I searched Craigslist for moving boxes. There were tons of listings, most of them from people who had just finished moving and wanted to get rid of theirs for free. I messaged a few, and one person replied right away. The name was Beth. Her message said, "I've got a bunch of clean moving boxes, all sizes. Come tonight if you can. I just want them gone." She sent an address about 15 minutes away. I said I'd be there around 7, and she replied, "Perfect. I'll leave them by the side of the garage. No need to knock." When I got there, it was already dark. The house looked ordinary, 2-story, tidy yard, lights on inside. Sure enough, a stack of flattened boxes sat neatly by the garage, tied with string. I threw them in my trunk and left. When I got home, I cut the string and started unfolding the boxes. Most were fine, just a little dusty. But one of them had something drawn on the inside, a rough marker outline of what looked like a handprint. It wasn't paint. It was too dull for that. I didn't think much of it at the time. People's kids draw on boxes all the time. I stacked them against the wall and went to bed. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a scraping sound, like cardboard rubbing against the floor. I figured it was just the heater turning on, so I rolled over and tried to sleep again. Then I heard it again louder. I turned on the lamp. The stack of boxes had shifted slightly. I told myself maybe I hadn't balanced them well. I pushed them back into place and went back to bed. The next morning, I started unpacking properly. One of the smaller boxes had something inside already, a small envelope taped to the bottom. It was sealed, no writing on it. Curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed what looked like a storage room, dimly lit, full of stacked boxes just like the ones I'd picked up. But in the corner of the picture, a figure was standing, a blurry shape, almost human, facing the wall. I dropped it immediately. I checked all the other boxes. Nothing else inside. I threw that one in the trash and tried to forget about it. That night, I couldn't shake the weird feeling. Every time I walked into the living room, those boxes caught my eye. I decided to move them to the storage closet. I dragged them over, stacked them neatly, and shut the door. At around 1 a.m., the scraping sound started again. This time it was coming from the closet. I froze. I stared at the door for a long time, waiting for it to stop. When it didn't, I grabbed a broom and slowly opened it. Nothing. Just boxes. But one of them was open now, the same one I'd thrown away earlier. I knew I'd taken it out. I checked my trash can. It was empty. The next day, I drove back to the address where I'd gotten them. I was going to give them back, or at least tell the person to come get them. When I pulled up, the house looked abandoned. Overgrown grass, boarded windows, for sale sign tilted in the yard. I double-checked the address. Same one. I sat there for a while, feeling stupid. Maybe I'd written it down wrong, but the boxes had definitely been there the night before. That evening, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Did you use them yet?" I didn't reply. A few minutes later, another one came. "Don't leave them open." I threw my phone on the couch and didn't touch it again that night. When I woke up the next morning, the boxes were all unfolded and arranged across my living room floor like someone had been building something with them. I didn't even have the energy to freak out. I just started taping them shut and hauling them to my car. At the dump, I tossed them all into one of the bins, every last one. I watched until they disappeared under other trash. That night, the apartment felt quiet again, peaceful. Until around 3 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of tape peeling. Slow, deliberate, like someone pulling packing tape off cardboard. It was coming from the hallway. I stayed in bed, holding my breath, listening. The sound stopped after a few seconds. When I got up in the morning, there was a single box sitting in the middle of the living room, the same one with a handprint inside. I lost it. I grabbed it, ran outside, and shoved it into the dumpster behind my building. Then I called my brother, told him I needed help moving. He laughed at first, but when I told him about the text and the photos, he said he'd come by that night. When he showed up, he helped me look around. We found nothing strange, except for one thing. A faint set of smudges on the inside of the storage closet door, like fingerprints pressed into the wood. We left that night and stayed at his place. The next morning, I got another text from that same number. It said, "You took mine." That was it. I called the police, showed them the text, told them everything. They took my statement, but said there wasn't much they could do. The number came back untraceable. A few days later, the apartment complex manager called me. He said maintenance had gone in to fix the heater and found something weird. When I went back to get my mail, he showed me. In the corner of the living room, right where the boxes used to sit, there were new scuff marks on the floor, long, dark streaks like something heavy had been dragged. He asked if I'd moved furniture recently. I said no. That night, I packed everything and left for good. A few weeks later, I read a story online about an abandoned house being cleared out by a cleaning crew. The photo in the article caught my attention immediately, the same house where I had picked up the boxes. The headline said, "Authorities discovered dozens of empty boxes, sealed from the inside." I didn't even finish the article. I deleted my Craigslist account and changed my number. Every so often, when I order something online, I get uneasy when I see a package on my porch. I can't bring myself to open them right away. Sometimes I'll leave them outside for hours. Because now every time I see a cardboard box, I can't help thinking of that handprint inside and wondering what was trying to get out. I never really liked yard sales, but my mom did. She could spend hours digging through boxes of random junk, calling everything a bargain. I was home visiting one weekend, and she begged me to drive her to a sale she'd seen listed on Craigslist. The ad was short and kind of strange. It just said, "Everything must go. Long family history. Cash only." The address was on a quiet back road a few towns over. We got there around 10 in the morning. The driveway was long and cracked, leading to an old two-story house that looked like it hadn't been painted in decades. Tables were set up across the yard, covered with boxes of old toys, dishes, books, and furniture. A small handwritten sign on the mailbox said "Yard Sale. Come in." There weren't many people there. Just an older woman sitting in a folding chair by the garage, wearing sunglasses and sipping from a mug. She smiled at us as we walked up, but didn't say much. My mom went straight for the glassware section, so I wandered around. The stuff felt different from other sales, less like a clear out and more like someone had just walked away from their life. Old photo albums, clothes still folded neatly, piles of handwritten letters tied with string. One thing caught my eye, an antique camera sitting alone on a table. It was one of those old box-style ones, heavy, scratched, but still intact. I picked it up, and the woman said from her chair, "That one still works." I asked how much, and she said, "Take it for $15. I handed her the money, and she smiled faintly. "You might see something interesting if you use it," she said. I laughed awkwardly and said I'd probably just put it on a shelf. When we got home, my mom was thrilled with her finds, some plates, a few books, but I couldn't stop looking at that camera. It felt heavy in my hands, like there was something inside it. When I shook it lightly, it rattled. I opened the back and found a half-used roll of film still loaded inside. I hadn't touched a film camera since I was a kid, but curiosity got the best of me. I dropped the roll off at a local photo shop and told the guy behind the counter to call me when it was ready. 2 days later, he called saying the pictures were odd. When I went to pick them up, the guy handed me the envelope without saying much. I pulled out the stack of prints right there at the counter. The first few were normal, old shots of the same house from the yard sale. A living room, a kitchen, maybe from years ago. The next few, though, made my stomach tighten. They were photos of people sitting around a dinner table, but all of them looked wrong. The faces were blurred, not because of motion, because they were out of focus, like the camera refused to capture them. In each picture, one person's head was turned sharply toward the camera, eyes wide, but the details of their face were completely missing, just smooth, pale skin. The last photo was of the front of the house, taken from the driveway at night. The porch light was on, and in the window above the garage, there was a figure standing perfectly still looking down. I stuffed the photos back into the envelope and left. When I got home, I shoved the camera in a drawer and tried to forget about it. That night, around midnight, I heard a faint clicking sound coming from my closet. I thought maybe it was a bug or the pipes, but when I got up to check, the sound stopped. The next morning, I opened the closet, and the camera was sitting on the top shelf where I had left it, but the film compartment was open. I knew I hadn't touched it since putting it away. Later that day, I called my mom to tell her about the photos. She laughed at first until I described them. Then she got quiet. She said, That house we went to, I recognize it. I think we went to that same place years ago when I was little. My parents called it the Gray Place. They said it was cursed. I told her not to joke, but she said she wasn't. She read that a family who used to live there had disappeared one night. Their neighbors found the house empty, food still on the table, lights on, but no people. No trace of them ever showed up. I didn't know what to say. I just hung up and sat there staring at the camera. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I decided to open it again. The inside was clean, but when I tilted it toward the light, I noticed a thin film strip stuck behind the reel. I pulled it out carefully. It was another piece of undeveloped film, short, maybe 3 frames. I didn't want to take it back to the Photoshop after what happened last time. Instead, I took pictures of it on my phone and uploaded them to a website that processes negatives digitally. The preview images came through a few hours later. 3 photos. The first was my living room. The second was me sitting on my couch, looking down at my phone. The third was the window behind me, except someone was standing outside it. I turned around so fast I almost fell over. The blinds were closed, but my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I checked the locks, the doors, every inch of the apartment. Nothing. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I packed the camera and the photos into a box and drove back to that house. When I got there, the driveway was empty. The tables from the yard sale were gone. The grass looked overgrown, like no one had been there in months. I knocked anyway. No answer. I left the box on the porch and drove away. That night, my mom called me again. She said she'd been thinking about that woman from the sale. She tried calling the number from the Craigslist ad, but it was disconnected. Then she said something that made me cold all over. She checked the county records for that address. The house was marked vacant. Has been for years. I didn't go back. A week later, a small envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside were 3 new photos. The first was that same house. The second was me, standing on the porch holding the box. The third was my front door. I threw them away, packed a bag, and stayed with my mom for a while. Now, I don't go near Craigslist. I don't stop at yard sales. I don't even take pictures anymore. Sometimes I still hear a faint clicking sound late at night, just one click, like a shutter snapping, and I tell myself it's nothing. But part of me wonders if the camera ever really left. Because every now and then, I'll find a new photo slipped under my door. And in every single one, I'm standing a little closer to the window.